Ben 10 is one of those few properties that spawned from nothing and has just amassed this cult following since it released in 2005. Created by comic industry titans like Joe Kelly and Joe Casey under the banner of Man of Action. The show is loved by so many in all of its quirks. And whether your favourite version of the show is Omniverse, the classic, or Ultimate Alien, whatever alien's your favourite, the designs, whatever, one thing that's consistent along all of those is its charm and its timelessness. And sure, yes, it is a kid's show and it does age a little bit as the audience gets older in terms of Ultimate Alien, but still, there are episodes like the Gwen episodes and stuff that just makes you cringe, but as a whole, there is enough there to keep you engaged even at an older age. So my interest was piqued when Dynamite said that they were going to be doing an absolute universe-based Ben 10 reimagining with the original writers back on for the job. I mean, it sounds awesome, but the first issue's out and it's just disappointing. I want to get out of the way first, the visuals. I am trying to be less of a negative person, at least in a non-constructive way. That doesn't mean I was a champion for Robert Carey on pencils. I was still, though, willing to give him a chance, because those previews that he let out, the black and white drawings of all the different aliens, looked really cool for the most part. I mean, there's a few of them that I'm not the biggest fan of, but as a whole, it's a pretty cool design. Then the Ashcan came out, and we saw Ben and Gwen, and their faces, they are rough, to say the least. This kind of goes through all of Carey's work. It seems to be a struggle to draw depth on the face. The eyes, they look like they've just been mirrored and shrunk, rather than seeing them from a different perspective. They look like, what am I thinking of? Movie Star Planet. Hold on a minute, this wasn't my thing growing up. Look, that's it. That's what Ben and Gwen look like. It's just it's the excessive shading around the eyes instead of creating that depth with pencil line. Obviously, art is up to interpretation and style can be sometimes misconceived for a difference in quality, but when you compare it to some characters that he's drawn, like Max, where there's clear definition in the face, and the kids, it's clear that the lack of lines is used in a way to kind of soften the face for a younger character. And really that should be down to your line width and your line type, not throwing away lines altogether. And if you struggle as an artist to draw younger characters, maybe you shouldn't have accepted a book that ultimately focuses on kids. I touched on Max, and that maybe is the worst bit of this comic for me, because I think in the original show, Max's design is probably the best among all the characters, because it sells and hides the twist of his spacefaring career. You believe that he is some innocent granddad in all of this, and then when he steps out of that van with his gigantic gun, you believe the look on his face, the grizzled look, you notice it a bit more. As the show gets more serious, Max gets more serious, and you believe that on his face. At no point does it dramatically change the way he looks. He still is this big old man, but you can see both sides of his life in his character, and they miss that with this new interpretation. In trying to follow down the Absolute Universe, they've just essentially copied and pasted Alfred's look from Absolute Batman, some grizzled ex-Special Forces guy. At no point am I looking at his character design and thinking that he's completely unrelated to the events going on, especially not when you're introducing the military and they look identical. If your two facial options mean that both of your characters on either end of the spectrum look the same, you're either a bearded old white guy or you are a Movie Star Planet character, it's just not a good look. And in this first issue, we get the first look of the aliens in practice. Sure, you can have these really cool designs, and they are really cool. I love the way that Heat Blast looked and Forearms, but Forearms has a face, and he struggles with this face the same way that he did with Ben. The eyes are just really distracting. I would have rather this big hulking alien have microscopic little eyes. It's just, when you look at the show, a show that is essentially simplified character designs for ease of animation, and when that looks better than what you're producing for single panels in a 30-page comic, it doesn't look good. But I suppose all of these issues come down to the business decision to make this an absolute inspired book without knowing what that means. It feels like these designs are intentionally a bit more eldritch horror-y, which is what Robert Carey is quite good at. If you look at his portfolio, he draws xenomorphs and these big, like, unwieldy beasts, and they are really cool. But when you look at his previous work on superheroes, his poses are flat and his faces aren't good. And Ben 10 more than anything else, I mean, you've got Vilgax, yeah, the big squiddy man, sure, that kind of falls in his ballpark, but 90% of stories don't really suit his style, and there's a book for him somewhere, but really the editorial team should have picked him up on this. But anyway, it feels like they've massively misunderstood what makes the Absolute Universe so popular in the first place. Obviously, yes, the Absolute Universe is darker, it's grittier, there's a bit more edge to it, but there's the story reason for that. It's a universe built on Darkseid's energy rather than whatever Scott Snyder said. But what brings people into these stories isn't that edge. It is these creative teams that are free to do whatever they want to these legacy characters without the continuity of 500 books, without editorial down their throat, without changing long-time continuity that fans might write about. They're able to tell these stories that are true to the core of the character, their base ideals, freely. I mean, Batman, without money or support, has become this high-functioning being at the top of human performance that is striking fear into any level of villains in Gotham. Wonder Woman, without the love of all her sisters, banished by the gods, it becomes a powerful and, more importantly, a loving and compassionate leader. And Clark, stripped of hope, stripped of a loving set of parents on Earth, he's still become a beacon of hope himself. And that's the aspect that this book's missing. It's added grit and edge where not necessary. The military are already involved. There's a cyborg bear, but in terms of origin, it's pushing no boundaries. In terms of characterization, it's pushing no boundaries. There is no substantial difference here in this first issue to warrant reading this instead of just watching the show. It feels a lot like this is just a glorified reboot rather than taking it in a new direction. I'm sure there's cool opportunities for the military's involvement. There'll be some ridiculous chase down by the military, ultimately leading to Ben siding with them and then like, oh no, you're pretty chill. And the robot bear will be some whatever. But the worst part is that it feels like this is a reboot built on the fact that you've already watched the show, which is quite possibly the worst kind of reboot. It's not for a new audience. This is for kids that grew up on Ben 10, kids, okay? And through that, it feels like this origin is trying to be rushed. They are directly straight in the forest. Then Ben gets the Omnitrix. He tries to take it off for maybe a panel, and then he transforms twice in the book. There's no time to breathe. There is no kind of weight on him. The fact that he's found this alien device from a meteor, that it's stuck itself to his wrist, that he can now transform into aliens, it is just snowballing. He's already quipping in a fight against something. He's already become acclimatized to this, and it just doesn't feel right. If you wanted to have this be, the origin in one issue, there was no rush to get this book out. Delay it a month, delay it 2 months, do a giant-sized 50-page initial issue that goes through all the origin, and then you could start going on to the Monster of the Week or whatever you plan to do with the book. But this as a step forward, especially in the current comic landscape. We have got great titles coming out week on week. Dynamite really needs to put their best foot forward, and instead of, they've just rehashed a really good show in a worse way with, more importantly, worse dialogue. When the Ashcan came out, I spoke about this and I was unhappy with the way that it sounded. And I suppose maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm too old now. But when I watched the old show, I feel like that bickering between Gwen and Ben is timeless. You could look through multiple generations and you could feel similar things being said because it wasn't referential. Every single statement didn't need to be a cue to the modern day. And I suppose that is going to be a problem with writers now, writing for kids, because everything is, in real life now, referential. Every kid is talking about Labubu's or whatever, and by the time, like even now, me mentioning that dates this video. It's already out of the communal space right now. I went to a car boot sale a flea market, whatever, and there was just hundreds of them just sitting around because no one cares anymore. And that's, I suppose, the way that our conversations go. They mention Freddy Fazbear. Why are we talking about Five Nights at Freddy's? Who is this for? You cannot make something like this and expect it to have that charm of feeling like a kid, that charm of timelessness, and date it to something from months before your publishing date. The game is kind of gone, and maybe they needed to go even further into the absolute treatment. Bring on a new team, a new visionary from the original creators. Obviously for DC that's a lot easier because they're all dead, but bringing on this old team and trying to recapture the magic of the original show. But in most instances, instead of that taking you to the past highs of the franchise, it brings you to its new lowest lows. Well, it's still not reached the franchise's lowest. Maybe I was just too excited. I was hyping this up to everyone I was speaking to about, you know, the possibilities for this run. And there are still some of those great possibilities. There's time to switch artists, there's time to switch writers, there's time to get some new ideas in here. And it isn't just me though. I've spoken to a lot of my friends. I've got a friend at university who watched this, we rewatched this show at the same time, and when the Ash came out, I brought it the next day into uni and we both cringed. If it was dialogue with substance, if there was something else in that book that you could get excited for, but as I said before, Kerry's stances and poses aren't great. So the action just falls so flat. I am going to keep picking up issues, probably up to issue 6, or if there's an announced change on the creative team, maybe I'll keep going past that date too, and I'll do an update if anything changes. But anyway, what did you think? Did you enjoy the book? Did you like it? I don't really check up on social media much anymore, so I'm not aware of the general consensus, but yeah, what are you thinking? If you are a fan, are you excited to see some of those more really cool alien designs? Because Heat Blast, if I'm going to be positive, Heat Blast looked really cool. I think there's some cool opportunities in there. Some of the covers look brilliant, but they're covers. They're not, you know, the real meat of the story. So this can make a turnaround, hopefully. The show's 20 years old, we're over that. There are going to be writers in the industry right now, good writers in the industry right now, that grew up on this show that have a more nuanced and different relationship with this story, that would be able to tell new stories from a new perspective. I mean, I'm sure we wouldn't all have a problem with an Ultimate Spider-Man kind of aspect where he gets it later in life. That'd be really cool, especially given the fact that they are aware that their audience is grown up. And I think that kind of take where it's not focusing on updating dialogue, updating things for the modern day, where it's more about transforming the story into something new. I think that's the key to writing a good, alternative, absolute story. Ignore the setup, I'm back home for the weekend, but I'll get back to all my comics and stuff. Anyway, see ya.